Jumping overboard from the USS Abraham Lincoln, which has now been deployed in the Middle East for 266 days. It's about 9 months deployed. 250 of those days, not even with a land stop. This is because they are in the middle of Trump's war with Iran, and that war is taking a toll on sailors aboard who've complained about not having enough food. They've literally gone hungry, and we've heard these complaints. The lack of basic necessities, that includes toothpaste, deodorant, soap. And all of those things add up with an incredibly long deployment that keeps getting extended to dangerously low morale. There are 5,000 American sailors on board. But tonight, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is denying the reports, saying they're simply untrue. Listen to what he told Newsmax when questioned about the reporting while traveling in Panama.
Completely misrepresented. Listen, we make sure that every ship, every crew, every captain has everything we can provide them at every single moment. Some deployments are longer than others, and I have more respect and gratitude for those sailors than anybody.
Well, no, that ship is moving. No, they're not. That ship is moving right now, or very shortly, and it's being replaced with another very similar ship.
Has the deployment gone on too long?
No. Not nearly long enough. Thank you, everybody.
The Donald Trump has now had going for 9 straight months, even though his war against Iran has not been going on for 9 full months yet. But sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, according to a new report from the Military Times this week, have tried jumping overboard because of the horrific conditions they are suffering under for 9 straight months. As recently as April, we got reports, right? 2 months in. Not even 2 full months, but 2 months into Donald Trump's campaign against Iran, soldiers had already been reporting, right? The Navy sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln had already been reporting deteriorating conditions, a dwindling food supply, to the point where they described their meals as a handful of boiled carrots and an unidentified grayish meat. That's it. It's not like you had other sides to choose from either. Boiled carrots and gray meat. Doctors aboard the ships had been warning a month ago, and we talked about this at the time, that these soldiers are going to start kind of losing their minds because of the extended deployment, because of the horrible conditions. The laundry machines aren't working properly or at all in some cases. The showers aren't working. There's mold everywhere, which of course can cause physical illnesses. Things are bad. And Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth are ignoring these people. And so, yes, we do have our first reports that a sailor attempted to jump overboard in order to escape. Or at least maybe be sent back home. And now, of course, he could be facing a dishonorable discharge, losing his entire, more than a decade of military service. These sailors, all the troops, everywhere, regardless of branch of military, they're being used by this administration. I can't even say as pawns. They're just being used as inanimate objects. Right? They don't view them as real human beings, real people. They are statistics. They are numbers on a spreadsheet that the administration looks at. Okay, 5,000 sailors on the USS Abraham Lincoln deployed over there. 5,000 is a good number. They've been there for 9 months. That's not even a full year. They haven't even missed Christmas yet, right? They're fine.
Who jumped off the USS Lincoln and was medically evacuated. My colleague Lindsay Papia and I spoke exclusively to the wife of the sailor who jumped off the USS Lincoln and was medically evacuated from the ship. The Lincoln's been deployed for 265 days and hit a modern-day record for most continuous days at sea without a port call. Family members are concerned about potential exhaustion, low morale, and the mental health of those on board. The wife of the sailor who jumped said her husband was struggling with his mental health and repeatedly expressed his concerns to his higher-ups, but was quote-unquote brushed off. The Navy says they can't comment on the medical records of individual service members to protect patient privacy. In the last message she received from him before he went overboard, he said in part, "I think the boat is finally getting to me. It's really getting me. I don't think I can do another deployment after this, and I don't even know if I can finish this deployment." The woman told me her husband jumped off the ship last Monday, but she didn't hear anything from the Navy for 4 days, not until Friday, despite her attempts to reach out. She also said he raised concerns about his prescription contact lenses having expired, saying he was getting yelled at for accidents on the flight deck that he said happened because he couldn't see properly. She says despite that, he was still allowed to work. She told me, quote, "I think that also had a big toll on him because he could have injured a lot of people and he could have injured himself because that's what they kept yelling at him every time he made a mistake." It comes after I recently reported on the horrible conditions on board the Lincoln, including a lack of food, hygiene products, and non-working toilets. Now, lawmakers are adding to the calls for answers as these reports raise serious concerns about the welfare of service members deployed in the ongoing war in Iran. My colleague Lindsay.
Weeks, we are hearing from the families of U.S. sailors and Marines. Those family members are outraged by the horrific conditions on board the USS Abraham Lincoln. They describe long workdays, moldy showers, food shortages, and sailors running out of toothpaste, deodorant, and soap. They say their loved ones, our service members, are so exhausted after 9 months at sea, fighting a war with no end in sight, that they fear it could lead to deadly mistakes. Here's how one mom describes her own outrage and the conditions she learned from her son over email.
Food obviously has been scarce. All he's really told me is there's a time where he was only eating half a cup of rice and 2 tortillas. The morale is bad. You're not being able to shower. They don't have toiletries. They're having to share stuff. They're exhausted. Trump doesn't want the bad publicity. He knows that you can't tell me he does not know what's going on over there. You cannot tell me that he does not know that they don't have food.
I see a couple of things happening that I think are frankly much more important. On the one hand, we have reports coming in today from the fleet that sailors on aircraft carriers, specifically the USS Abraham Lincoln, are jumping overboard to get off the ship. They've been out at sea since the 21st of November. I mean, this is incomprehensible. It's inhuman. I mean, even the days of the Royal Navy, which was pretty rough as an institution, they understood there was a 6-month limit, and at that 6-month point, people had to get off the ship. The idea that we would have sailors at sea since 29 November really leads me to question what the admirals are thinking about. What are they doing? One of their critical jobs is to ensure that the people that are out there serving are not unnecessarily abused by their own chain of command. This is not...
Even at the end of their shifts, the fact that these sailors and Marines can't take showers, they can't wash their uniforms. I had some family members tell me that they believe that prisoners and inmates in jail are treated with more dignity and respect than our service members.
So, Patrick, let's get your take about the brutally demanding conditions that service members are facing overseas as we wait for some resolution to the war with Iran. MS Now spoke with a dozen family members and sailors and Marines aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, who say they're extremely concerned about the morale, safety, and conditions on that ship. The 5,000-person crew has been at sea for 9 straight months and engaged in combat operations since the beginning of the war against Iran, all the way back in February. Many family members describe their kids or spouses telling them about non-operational toilets, moldy showers, laundry facilities that were broken for weeks, and extended periods with no hot water for showering. The families say their loved ones have described food shortages and standing in line at the ship's store for an hour or more, even while it often lacks basic supplies like toothpaste, soap, and deodorant. Let's bring in MS Now Pentagon reporter Priya Sridhar, who broke that story. Former Acting Army Secretary Patrick Murphy also back with us. Priya, it's a great story. People think about service members, in this case sailors, in a combat zone. They, of course, think about the dangers the enemy may pose. They perhaps think less about just the conditions they have to live with each and every day, sounding, from your reporting, sounding downright miserable and at times maybe even dangerous.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, you know, the Lincoln just set a record in the Navy for having the most continuous days at sea, with more than 200 days underway. They left San Diego in November. They had a brief stop in Guam in December, and then they didn't stop for a port call again until early July, just briefly in Oman, where most of the sailors were able to get off the ship, but they had to stay in port. And really what the families were telling me is they're very worried about exhaustion here. Most of their family members are working 12 to 14-hour shifts. They're depending on their job. They're not getting any days off. And when you talk about a flight deck on an aircraft carrier, this is one of the most dangerous places in the military. You're having high-speed aircraft taking off and landing. You have munitions, weapons, and bombs being moved around at a very fast pace. And the service members are also being exposed to, you know, really loud noises for a sustained period of time, which can really lead to long-term injuries like hearing loss. So when you're talking about exhaustion, when you're talking about low morale, because now this deployment has been extended for a second time and there's no end in sight, they're worried that those things could lead to accidents that could potentially even be deadly. I want you to take a listen to what some of them told me.
They didn't choose to be there. They volunteered to be there. They're willing to be there, and they're doing their best. So they want our support. And part of that support means we have to have the tools to do our job. That means the fuel. That means the food, right? That means the food. That means the toothpaste and the deodorant. That means all of it, right? Now,
I don't think it's the ship is the issue. I think it's our president, it's our government that's not helping the morale. I think the ship is doing what they can do with what they're given. But I think our government needs to be doing more for our military that's sitting over there.